New phone, S25 Ultra, new from Samsung. This is their newest lineup. So far, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot going on with it, I'll be completely honest. But excited to jump into it. I haven't been rocking Samsung for the last few years. The last Samsung I had was I think it was the Note 10 Plus. I actually got the Kylo Ren edition. It was the Star Wars edition. I was able to snag one of them when I worked at Best Buy at the time. So that was really, really cool. Recently, I've been rocking the Sony, the Xperia series. Usually either the 1.3 or now I'm rocking the 1.5. We'll see how it goes checking out a wider phone. I haven't really looked at Samsung over the last few years. I know they've integrated a lot of the Note series, or what was the Note series, to their normal S series. Pretty eager to jump into it. Packaging so far seems really, really nice. Pretty low key. I can obviously tell that there is no power brick in the box, kind of pulling what Apple did. Unfortunately, Apple sets the standard. Get to thank them a lot for their garbage, but you know, that's how it is sometimes. But I can tell at least, yeah, no brick. Unfortunately, I have 25 watt, I think, somewhere here that you can use for the fast charging, but I think this does get up to 45 watts for fast charging. It's 15 watt for the Qi 2 charging if you decide to do it. I personally don't. I like the cable, but the convenience is nice if maybe you have it built into your car or something like that too, or maybe like a wall mount, you know, for your phone. And then I do hear the rumors about the Bluetooth S Pen not being able to take photos with the S Pen anymore, just using it to write and doodle and stuff, which is very disappointing to hear. Honestly, the S Pen for me in my everyday, I do not write. I'm not good at drawing. So taking the photos, using the back camera, super nice. I use that all the time. And now you can't. We got packaging very similar, also very similar to Apple here actually, with the way they do their peel offs. It is a one-time peel off opening. So once you do it, we're sealed. We're doing it. But the phone itself comes in. I'll try to see if we can get the overhead camera to get it, but they have like some sort of cool Gorilla Glass. I'll put this over to the side. Gorilla Glass technology that they do, so it should be pretty strong. Do I trust it? Absolutely not. No, I don't. Everyday stuff happens, and you can't lie to yourself and say that you've probably never either cracked a phone or at least in the very minimal damaged it. But it is a really, really nice color. What is that, titanium almost looking on the sides, and a slightly lighter, so you get like two-tone on there. Cool little cover, let's see. Very nice. 6.9 inch screen. It is going to be their AMOLED, classic staple for Samsung. It is 1440p, very normal resolution. It is adjustable at the very least, so if you want to potentially get more than the 20 or so hour battery life you're going to get out of this thing, you definitely can. 120 hertz at 1440p is super, super adequate when it comes to using these phones, especially what I'll probably be using it for will be some photos here and there. I play a lot of Pokemon Go, open up some Pokemon packs, stuff like that. Video watching is gonna be super, super nice. The thing I am excited for is the brightness of the screen. The Sony that I have here is actually gonna be a 4K OLED. It's a little bit high resolution, but it's way less bright. It's like 500 nits at the most. Pulling out the phone from the box here, let's turn this thing on. 2600 nit screen at its peak brightness. It's gonna be actually a little bit brighter than some even the MacBook screens that they have. The brightness matters in terms of real world. I would count as real world activity, being outside, being about. The Snapdragon chip on here, the new 8 Elite. It's supposed to be a really big jump up. I'm gonna play some games. We're gonna see how good of a jump it is, but if it is, at least now you can actually get good Wi-Fi to match pretty solid gaming performance that is gonna be on the phone. It is 5,000 milliamp hour battery. It is gonna be all day. I would assume a slightly more powerful chip is going to be a little less efficient overall compared to the S24 Ultra. Realistically, I would be very surprised if 99% of people saw that in terms of difference in their everyday use. They do have battery care features, whether it be for your screen brightness, whether it be for how much you're charging until, for how fast your processor is, changing the screen resolution. That stuff is all pretty controllable, whether you just do it based off the base settings of the device itself. They have developer options still you can enable for all the Samsung phones. First impressions, it is so much simpler of an Android setup compared to the last time I had it. And I'm gonna jump into display because that is what I wanna see. We get to turn up brightness. They have adaptive brightness, which is good. Man, this is super, super nice. Screen resolution default looks like it's set to 1080p. Probably preferred for the average individual wanting to get the most battery life out of this thing, but I'm gonna switch it to 1440. We're gonna go higher resolution. The high resolution, especially while we're fiddling around with apps, maybe potentially, get into the camera in a little bit, is gonna be really, really nice. Got the brightness all the way up. That is pretty great. Kind of comparing it back and forth. This is max brightness on the Sony right here. I guess just kind of comparing. Let's see if we can, even just like some apps, that is almost 2 times as bright. It is a lot wider of a phone, to be granted, but that is pretty amazing. And it is very smooth, that 120 hertz. And it is adaptive. It is gonna be sitting pretty nice and still when you're not using it, but when you are flicking through, it is going to be really, really nice, really, really smooth. I'm personally good on brightness because I'm using my phone a lot outside, whether it be for note-taking, playing games like Pokemon Go, the sun in my face, not only on the screen, but in your face. Having a nice bright screen is going to be really nice. It also is really good for dynamic. It's going to make content pop. It's going to be like your TV or the TVs you see at Best Buy. It's $12.99 for the base. It's only 256 gigs of storage, at least starting off. It's 12 gigs of RAM. There is no more expandable storage on here. It's probably my second worst feature that I use all the time on my other phone. What I used on my Note 10 is that you can't put like a little micro SD card. You can't throw a bunch of movies on there. You can't throw a bunch of extra music on. So you are going to have to get the spec for storage that you are going to want out of the box, which is a little sad. It does go all the way up to a terabyte though. So the storage options are there. They have made up for it, but a little disappointing only having single SIM and no expandable storage. Comparing it to iPhone, I mean, they've never had any sort of expandable storage. It's always been, you get the storage option you want, or it's iCloud. Always going to be one of the two options for you there. I believe on their Pro, it's going to be a 128 starting on there. So at least base storage is going to be higher on the Samsung. Apple, you can still configure it up to your 1 terabytes at this point, whether you go for the normal all the way up to the Pro Max. I know for the Pro, it's $999, and for the Pro Max, I believe it's $100 or $200 more. So around the same cost for flagship phones, it is going to be a little bit over $1,000, which is definitely not cheap, especially considering these days. But it is quite a bit of phone. So if maybe you're going from Apple to Android, like this is a phone you're considering getting, use case is not going to be all that different. It's going to be very similar to what you are come to expect. It is now more rounded on the edge, or at least a little less rounded on the outside, a little more rounded on the inside. Samsung has never looked more like Apple. It's really just material what Android is going to have to offer in terms of feature sets. Other than that, it's going to be pretty spot on. I do like the Android ecosystem a little bit more, only in terms of just personal preference for customization, where apps can go. iOS has made some pretty amazing strides recently in terms of how your apps look. Now you can actually put apps wherever you want on the page, mixing widgets in. It's pretty great these days, but has not always been the case. And Apple's usually more slower to the punch on software upgrades compared to Samsung, or at the very least, you have the third party from Samsung that people will make whatever sort of content. Android 15, there's 7 UI or 1 UI 7. Very confusing naming scheme, admittedly, by Android, but admittedly simple. Definitely not a whole lot going on, but the customizability is definitely still there. I do want to compare the screen size. Here we go. We got iPhone 16. This is the Pro Max here. Maybe the most similar to what we have right now. Both are just going to be 6.9 rated screens, but in terms of usable screen, they're about the same. Kind of having them next to each other, it is going to be, wow, these are pretty close, but the rounded edges of the current iPhone really do give it almost an illusion that it is a little bit smaller. In terms of thickness though, pretty close on there too. Camera's bump is different lenses, but pretty close to about the same. Both have a very similar matte texture on the back. Both are fingerprint absolute magnets. I have clean hands and it is still already disgusting. I've only held this phone for a few minutes now. Man, very similar, not necessarily in terms of shape, but very similar size, very similar weight as well too. Phones are just getting heavier, especially the big ones too. They put a lot in here. Adequate cooling, huge batteries. I wonder if the camera will pick this up. Those fingerprints are terrible. Feels really, really good, but it is not fun to look at, unfortunately. The main attraction, comparing cameras. iPhone 16 Pro Max, 48 megapixel on their main. I believe it's a 12 megapixel telephoto. 5x optical zoom. Not bad for every day, wanting to take selfies, pictures of your dog, maybe cute cat here and there. It's pretty great. It always represents great on iPhone. iPhone has probably the best post-processing out of all the phone companies. I say that very confidently, even me not currently using an iPhone. Samsung, they have their 200 megapixel camera with their main sensor, which is all that I really care about. They do a 10x on their optical zoom, and usually Samsung known for their up to 100x digital zooms. The quality is gonna be close. It's really like direct detail. Is that 200 megapixel really gonna show on a sensor this small, especially being on a phone, a carryable device here? First impressions, that looks pretty dang good. It doesn't deal with light as good. The iPhone sensor is going to be quite a bit better, but in terms of overall detail, that is pretty amazing. The stuff represented here, and actually how fast it even gets the studio light as well, how low that ISO goes is pretty great too. I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm very impressed overall, at least first impressions. I am going to be able to put this in the real world, hopefully get some car shoots, hopefully get some good walks around, see what the video is like. It does do 8K at 30 frames per second on the Samsung. The iPhone 16 only does do the 4K at 120, which Samsung also does. So I'll kind of compare what it'll look like back and forth. Very curious to see how a heavily processed image and also footage is going to look like compared to me shooting RAW from a phone. I prefer having it raw. The adjustability and the data, the pure just things that you get off of it usually ends up looking a lot better, but I'm very curious to see how it goes. Very, very excited actually to do it. I'm gonna hand this back. So who is this phone for? We'll see if it's for me. If you're coming from Apple, whether it be an old phone, maybe it is a new phone, you'll find stuff that you like with it. At least you have nothing really to compare it to. So perfect for the people who don't already have a Samsung. If you have a Samsung from previous years, maybe even an S24, you've only had it for a year and a half, I don't recommend it. The specs are super similar. It's almost the same exact footprint even. I think it's just a little rounded on the edge. Other than that, the body is the exact same. Realistically, the biggest draw would be like the processor. So like if you are going to be doing gaming potential content on here, the brightness being up to 2600 nits is really, really nice. And then your marginal improvements, if you want to have, I guess, the best experience with Samsung's new AI tools and features, then you do it. But it's hard to justify spending another $1,300 when you could just stick with your current one and it's gonna feel and function almost the exact same way. Speaking of the AI functionality, free right now. Cool new features, updated for at least modern Samsung phones, gonna be on the device when you get it out of the box. There are rumors that it could be paid in the future, maybe subscription model, potentially just more expensive phones. We'll see how they decide to monetize it. This is nothing official, but I guess in terms of personal opinion, that would be so disappointing, especially Apple AI features being pretty amazing on their way in and the support on their devices, how specific they are to do it. If Samsung were to quickly monetize, say like similar features, I think would be a perfect way to shut people out and to have people not use them, especially with how much money they're probably putting into developing these. It's not great. I'm hoping they don't. But, you know, Samsung always tries to sneak something, you know, over the eyes, especially a few years after, right? So definitely, hopefully they just stick as rumors. But yeah, I mean, other than that, first impressions, pretty amazing. I'm very excited to hold on to this thing. I get to keep this for at least a week. We're gonna see how it goes, see how it's different into carrying with the Sony. We're gonna see that. There'll be a video out most likely in a week or two, hopefully, and get that out for you guys. But yeah, if you could go down below, like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification if you can. Hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Later.